Hello, everyone, and welcome to the I Create Community Awesomeness Show, brought to you by ICA. I will be your host today. My name is Jillian Cardinal, and I will be joined by 4 association executives from around the world who have made the transition to virtual events during these current events. We are going to be learning a little bit about them and their experiences along the way throughout our show today. So let's meet everyone, shall we? We're going to start with Ksenia. Ksenia, please introduce yourself and tell our fantastic audience about your experience up until now with virtual events.
Well, thank you for having me on your show today. And like most of us, I have been learning on the fly. I had literally 48 hours to have an in-person event go live online in March. And in the last 8 months, which almost seem like 8 years, I have been learning every day, millions of webinars, articles, reading, resources. Everything was up for grabs for me. And I've been exchanging a lot of those resources with my colleague Sina, and we've organized quite a lot of webinars and events in the past couple of months. And she will be telling you all about it a little bit more when it's her turn.
Perfect segue. Thank you, Ksenia. To Sina, tell us a bit about your experience, please.
I feel like I became a Zoom webinar expert overnight because back in March, we immediately transitioned into virtual events because we still wanted to create education and content for our members. So since March, we organized hundreds of webinars. And up until today, we also transitioned 3 of our face-to-face events into virtual ones using simple technology like Zoom meetings, on-air or Zoom webinar. And right now, we're in the process of organizing our annual Congress, which is going to be hybrid with 8 hubs around the world and the virtual audience. So I'm ready to share my experience. I'm ready for the show, and I'm ready to win.
Whoa, that competitive spirit is coming out. I love it, Sina. Let's move on over to Ian.
Hello there, everyone. Well, it's good to be on your show. Going to win, obviously, being the Darth Vader of the group here. So our transition to virtual took place back in March. We did an in-person event in Bangkok, which was quite badly affected. So we knew then that we were going to have to move our June event to a virtual event. Still, we had 11 weeks to do it. And we were able to pull that together pretty quickly using my dining table and my cats. You can probably hear one of them at the moment, who helped out on the conference. We managed to do an event for 630 people across a space of 3 days. So looking a bit further ahead, in December, we were supposed to be going to Osaka. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that now either. So we have decided to do a virtual event, which will be a full 24 hours, starting at 4 in the morning Central European time and ending 24 hours later. And we'll be going to about 20 plus countries in that time. So we've got to do something to keep our community together, and we've got to do something to keep our sanity as well. So that's why we've gone virtual.
And last but certainly not least, our princess, Diane.
Thank you so much, Jillian, for having me today. I'm super excited to be participating in the ICA show. ISCB, like many associations, had to really refocus our purpose back in March and transition all of our events for the remaining 2020 into virtual. We were very successful to convert our biggest flagship meeting, the ISMB meeting, into a virtual event. It was 10 concurrent sessions over 4 days, over 500 talks, 725 posters, and close to 2,300 participants. Now, I will say I kind of thought I had foresight. I got my digital event strategist certification back in 2019, but it did not prepare me at all for the actual hard work that went into virtual events. And I don't know if the rest of my colleagues on the show today are like me, but I cannot wait to go back to in person. I'm waiting for the moment where we can just be all on site together. But in the meantime, I'm excited to share some of my tips and tricks and my failures along the way.
And I bet there's been many failures and successes that we can learn from.
Absolutely.
Great. So everyone, I'm excited to see your game faces, your buzzer hand ready, the competition coming out. So for our audience today, here's how our show is going to work. There will be 5 categories, which are engagement, no ring required, what the tech, money makes the world go round, building your A-team, and what would you do if? I'm going to be awarding points at my own discretion. Do not try to keep track of them. They will make no sense. And then we're going to wrap everything up with a final question to each of our contestants. So let's begin now. Our first category, engagement, no ring required. Buzzer hands ready, everyone. This will be a multiple choice question. Contestants, you are planning your upcoming virtual event. What is the first question you should ask yourself? Is it A, what is my budget? B, what's the purpose of this event? C, what is the perfect tech platform? Or D, does the word pivot need to be used in the event's marketing? Ksenia.
I will go with answer B, purpose of your event.
Would you care to expand a little bit on that for 5 extra points?
Of course I would, because I'll do anything for extra points. When you do your live event, you need to have a purpose, because then you will do your marketing right. You will have your speakers, your content, everything built around. So it will be no surprise that for your online event, that's the first place you have to start off, because only with the purpose of your event, you can determine, okay, how long will you put it on? What time zone? Who is your audience? And how to get the buy-in from all your stakeholders.
Absolutely. Purpose is critical. And naturally, I'm going to make a book recommendation, The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. Everything starts with the purpose. Ksenia, 20 points for you. Excellent start. How would you say your communication strategy has changed moving to virtual? Because now we are facing so many more distractions than we had before. So how do we get our guests to want to buy in to joining our event? Ksenia.
But what we have experienced is also the way you communicate, and the media you use to communicate has changed tremendously with the online events. So we are now using in our communication and marketing a lot of bite-sized video messages from your key stakeholders, from staff, board members, chapter chairs, who are really engaging and communicating your messages as your event ambassadors. So that has really become one of our key success stories in communicating our key messages.
Excellent. Oh, Diane has a follow-up point, but before that, bite-sized messages don't get bite-sized points. 75, Ksenia. Woo! Diane,
now I really have to step up my follow-up. I think what I just would like to add to Ksenia's point is that making sure that your members know that you're out there to serve them is going to be very important in that communication strategy. So again, reiterating the purpose, reiterating the value, and also explaining to them every step of the way what they are expected to experience is really going to help as you move forward in the execution of the event.
Excellent. 2 extra points for that follow-up. Thank you, Diane. Now, we've always spoken of a global community, but now we really are one. So with virtual events, making our events near borderless, how have you incorporated your global community in ways that you haven't before? Whoa, with the lightsaber, Ian.
Well, as I mentioned, our December event is going to be a full 24-hour event where we're going to go around the globe. We wanted to take in places like Alderaan, but the idiots on the Death Star blew it up. So instead, we've had to go to other places on Earth instead. And we've decided that, there are parts of the world that obviously we haven't run conferences in the past. And that includes places like Africa and South America. And so it was really important when we put this conference together that we took in to account a lot of these regions that we hadn't been to before. So we're making sure that we're going to places like Mauritius, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, Brazil, Colombia, and really making sure that they feel part of our community as well. So, it really is a case of us being a global community and making sure that we practice what we preach as well now.
Bravo, Ian. You get 32 points. A follow-up from Sina.
Yes, talking about a global community. At our recent event in June, the Association Meetings program, we really noticed an increase in the registration numbers because now members were able to join the event that were usually not attending our event. Also, we had amazing keynote speakers from big corporations that we would, for face-to-face events, not be able to attract or afford. Also, in terms of accessibility, we used the technology of a hologram at our AES Live in September. So using this, it looked like the speaker was in Singapore, but he was actually in London. Ooh. Another example to widen your reach is that instant AI translation is improving so much and gets more and more affordable and easy to use. For example, a colleague of mine spoke at an event in China, and whereas he spoke in English, what he said got instantly translated into Mandarin by using the technology of AI. I think that's pretty cool.
That's awesome, Tina. Now, was that hologram Princess Leia by chance?
Almost.
Almost. 30 points for that. Ksenia, you have a follow-up point.
Yes, just to add to what both Ian and Sina said, the length of communication with your online community has now also expanded tremendously. People start discussing things they will talk during the event already much earlier. Then during the event, we've used several ways of really engaging with your online community, from Google Docs, note-taking documents. And then after the event, people really want to stay engaged and continue the conversation with LinkedIn groups, Slack groups, WhatsApp groups. So that has really expanded the reach within our community.
Excellent, Ksenia. 30 points for that. Oh, but Diane wants to get her voice in. Diane.
Just one last nugget for our audience to noodle today. Don't be afraid to start to switch your mindset and think more globally. While the pandemic has brought a lot of anxiety to us all and frustration as we've had to shift all of our business models, it's also brought a lot of opportunity. Take the time to go back and look at your membership list and see where you're not hitting in certain regions, and do a little bit more outreach in that area. With online events and on-demand recordings, you really have the opportunity now to push your organization forward in these times, to engage those members you haven't before.
Excellent. Thank you, Diane. 40 points. So touching on pretty much all of your points, what would you say is the most out-of-the-box way that you have engaged your attendees during your event? Ian?
Well, back in 2012, we created our own band. Our delegates created their own band, and obviously they've been playing live at our events ever since. So when it came to our event, our virtual event in June, we had a task of getting them all together. There's 7 members. They're all from different countries around the world, from Australia, from Finland, from Germany, Netherlands, and we had to get them all together to play live. And so we did.
Love that. So we have singing, we have engagement, we have music, we have fun. 80 points for that. Love that answer. Oh, but Ksenia wants to throw her hat in the ring. Ksenia.
I just want to add, so the senses are really important in this online environment. How can you bring the sense, some kind of sensual into your online meeting is very important. We've had like virtual taste sessions for some of our destinations. So music was definitely one of the senses we were playing on. You had a DJ from the rooftops of Brussels showing you the city from their perspective live. Or we had the Brussels Convention Bureau people taking us on a tour, tasting some of that a beer or chocolates. So, hey, trying to bring that in.
That is fantastic for tasting your way through destinations. I absolutely love that. So you get 100 points. Bravo. So our last question in this category is, name 3 tips for designing a successful virtual event program. Tina.
Yes. Okay. Keep in mind that in-person events cannot be transformed one-to-one to online events. First of all, I would say shorten your program. Don't organize day-long events, but rather keep it over a couple of days and have 3 to 4 hours a day. This really worked for our events, and like this, our members didn't have to dedicate a whole working day to join our events. Referring to the actual session, keep in mind that the attention span of people is 8 minutes. After 20 minutes, that decreases, and after 90 minutes, you completely lost them. Therefore, my second argument would be to shorten your session and include some variety. For example, a game show. And my third argument, or my third point, would be include some gamification and interaction. This can be really easy, like including some audience engagement tools, like Slido, for example.
Sina, all excellent points. You get 90 points for those responses. But I noticed Ian had a lot of reactions and feelings to what you were saying. Ian, do you perhaps want to contribute?
Absolutely. Sina, I may not be your father, but I will tell you off. So, you make some very valid points, actually. And I think it all depends on the knowing your conference, knowing your association, knowing your community very well. For us, we decided that actually we wanted to do this 24-hour event and actually do a full day. As opposed to just 8 hours within a day. But we did that because we thought it'd be kind of fun. We are a global community. And I kind of needed a challenge to, to do something different to what we did in June. We made sure that all our chunks were sort of bite-sized 1-hour chunks, nothing longer than 1 hour, and no presentation by any of the keynotes went on longer than 20 minutes, plus we had 10 minutes Q&A. I totally agree with you about having gamification and some variety. We had presentations, we had discussion panels, we had fireside chats. We had sort of case studies presented, and really the thing to do is to sort of mix it all up, and that makes for a varied program.
Ian, I'm going to give you 240 points. And now, a note from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by toilet paper. Worth more than gold, functional in more ways than you think. Now on to our next category. We're going to start with What the Text. This will be a true or false question. Contestants, get ready. True or false? There is a perfect holy grail platform for each and every event. Ksenia.
The answer is false.
False. Do you care to expand on why?
As I said at the very beginning of our show today, we are all about the purpose of the event. So unless you start with that, you can't decide what the correct platform for your event is. So there is not one holy grail which fits all. We have had several events with different purposes. So we had webinars where we used Zoom, and it was perfectly fine. And as Sina mentioned, we are now doing a 6-week live broadcast for our Congress, and there we are using several different platforms, and each one is connected to what we want to achieve with the particular session.
Excellent, excellent. 30 points. So our last question in this category, and this goes with your learning lessons and your experience. What would be one piece of advice that you would give to our audience today about AV and system requirements that you wish you had known before? Diane.
I think the number one piece of information that you can tell your audience what is the bandwidth you need for optimal viewing? So many times that question will come up. So I strongly encourage everyone, talk to your provider, whether that be Zoom or on air or whomever your platform is. Understand what that basic bandwidth requirement. Write a communication to anyone who is going to be speaking at the conference or anyone who is going to be playing your pre-records, and let them know to do a speed test on their system. And that speed test should be done at certain points throughout the day. So if you know that your bandwidth at 3 p.m. because all the kids are coming in from outside drops, make sure you're doing that speed test at 3 p.m. and also communicate to them how a virtual background works, what that means for your processor, because the last thing you want in the middle of a big keynote speaker is no one wants that at their virtual meeting.
Not at all. Excellent point as far as bandwidth, 30 points. Ksenia, do you have a follow-up?
Talking about virtual backgrounds, one of my key learnings was right off the bat for my first virtual event, we're thinking we're being very lavish and had the beautiful virtual background. And then there I ended up being just this head with every now and then a couple of hands. And I had to switch it off halfway through because little did I know is that you have to have an Intel processor, which is 7 or higher in order to support virtual backgrounds. So now I'm just with my own office and my own wall. But what we have found as a potential solution is an overlay called OBS Studio. So if you do want to have your logo, that is definitely a solution which can be supported even with the lower level laptops you have.
Excellent. OBS Studio, noted, 50 points. That closes out this category. On to our next. Money makes the world go round. So with everything that's happening as far as current events, there has been an ongoing discussion as far as free versus paid events. Contestants, where do you stand on that debate? Diane, we'll start with you.
I am very passionate about this, Jillian, very passionate. In my personal and professional opinion, your content has value. So if the content has value, why not charge for that value? Absolutely, yes, there should be programs within your organization's repertoire and portfolio that should be free and a member added benefit. But these large conferences and virtual events that we're producing, they come with a price tag. Now that price tag may only be 20,000 euros or 2,000 euros, but it's still something. There's staff time, there's tech involved, and that content has value. People pay to come to your in-person event. They'll be willing to pay to come to your virtual event because content has value.
Content has value. So we have for a paid 30 points. Ian, what are you going to say?
I totally agree with Diane. How on earth am I going to feed my cats if we don't have paid for events?
A very critical question that we all wonder ourselves when we plan these events.
I mean, I totally agree that there should be some free content, obviously, for your members. But, when it comes to doing your conferences, we live and die by our conferences. Our annual conference provides the majority of the income we need to survive as an association. If we did that for free, we just wouldn't survive. People want us to continue. Therefore, they will, and they have done. They have paid for our conferences. And there's an understanding between us and all our members of our community that that's how we survive and that's how we continue. So events have to be paid for. Absolutely, 100%.
We need to survive, and the cats need to survive. 37 points. Dina, you seem like you don't necessarily agree, though. Do you care to expand upon that?
Yes. So wearing the ICA hat, I do understand Diane and Ian's point that we need to organize events to generate income. However, from a personal point of view and looking at the current situation, I think we have to stress that some sessions or events should be for free. The situation right now has changed and we have to bring in the human element. There are a lot of people without a job and they would really benefit from this education. So I think we should show some empathy and keep this in mind.
Thank you for sharing a counterpoint. 25 points. So now, as we've been discussing as far as paid events and the value that they bring, how do you determine a price point for what these paid events should be? Ksenia.
So coming to that question of the Holy Grail for platforms, there is also no formula which will determine the price for every association, for every event. So what I'm happy to share is a couple of elements and a couple of models we have seen out there. One model is you charge simply the same registration fee which you would charge for your in-person event, having your markup, your costs, etc. So then another model we've seen is just charge 50% for the event. Obviously, a lot of associations have determined to give back to their community, and if they could afford it, they did a whole free event. But what I was in particularly surprised by was this new model, which is out there, and it is called Reserve Your Spot. So you reserve your spot with a nominal fee, and you pay only after the event the perceived value to you. If you want to know more about this, it is weshowup.io. There you can find out more about this entire process of paying for what you perceive as a value.
That's a very interesting point that I think there'd be a lot of debate around that as well. I'm going to give you 25 points. So the last question in this category, talking about budget still, what other revenue options could I perhaps incorporate into my online events that I may have not have thought about before? Ian.
So what we did was we created this thing called a listener rate. It was primarily for people who wanted to watch the recorded version of our conference. So what we did was obviously everybody who attended the conference paid a fee, and the conference was then online for the next month. So anybody who wanted to, obviously the people who had attended the conference, they get access for the full month. But anybody who wanted to just purchase the listener fee, which we only charged €100 for, they were able to do that, after the conference, and then have a whole month's worth of time to look at all the different sessions. So that was one thing that we did. Another thing was to think a little bit about virtual sponsorship. And one thing we did there was to sort of go to some of the organizations that we know would send quite a few delegates and say to them, look, just to recognize you as a supporter of the event, put your logo up on the site, etc., and in the conference app. Why don't we give you a group deal for the delegates that you want to send? And so we kind of traded delegate places for a bit of recognition for those organizations that provided a lot more support.
Nice ideas. 30 points. Diane, do you have a follow-up?
I just wanted to add another example for folks to consider. In a lot of situations, that mobile app and that program that was once printed is no longer in place in a virtual event. You're within your web platform or your delivery platform or your website pages. And what ISCB had done for those organizations who had just a little bit of funding but wanted to have a presence is we created an online marketplace. So it was much like a directory where you could just browse through and check out different categories of things, whether it was tools or cloud storage, software development, things like that. And it was all kind of organized in our online marketplace. And it was just a small fee to go in.
Solid ideas. 20 points. That closes out this category. Now we're going to move on to building your A-team. We're going to start with a true or false question. Contestants, get ready. True or false? I only need one person to set up a Zoom event. Sina.
False.
False. Would you care to expand on that, Sina?
Sure. For an online event, you still require a whole team. Don't underestimate the work that goes into an online event. For example, you still need people to manage the speakers, the registrations, marketing, everything that you usually also have to do for an in-person event. Or, for example, for a simple Zoom meeting, you still need somebody to moderate the chat, take care of the Q&A, be the host, or take care of the camera viewings. So don't underestimate the work that goes into it and have your stuff ready for that.
And don't ever underestimate Zena. 32 points. Ian, there's a smile on your face. What do you have to say?
Oh, this time I agree with Zena. No, if we think a little bit to the future as well, when we're going to have to run hybrid events, I think it would be a huge mistake if you think that your in-person team can also run the virtual element of a hybrid conference. No chance. So you're going to need to have two teams in place, and these two teams obviously will have to work together, but one will be focused on running the in-person event and the other one on the virtual element of your hybrid conference. So you're going to have to incur extra costs running a hybrid event, but having said that, hopefully you'll get a wider audience as well, where you've got people signing in from places that where they can't actually come and attend the conference in person. The other thing I'd like to add, and I have ICA to thank for this, because well, when we were back in Houston, just under a year ago, oh, how I missed the times when we were able to get together. They'll come back again, I'm sure. But in Houston, ICA had a fantastic program where you invited students to come along, and I met some students there from Leeds Beckett University, not far from where I live. And during our conference in June, we got some of them to help out. As Sina mentioned, when you're running a Zoom meeting, you need to have a facilitator who concentrates on just facilitating the session, but then you also need somebody else. It's really important that you have somebody else dealing with things like the Q&A and the chat and muting people who need to be muted and unmuting them when they need to be unmuted, all that sort of stuff. And you definitely need two people to run those sessions.
Bravo, 30 points. Great job in bringing in the students and the next generation of event profs. And as our industry is changing, how would you describe how a virtual event designer should look? What should they do? Who are they? Ksenia.
Just today, during one of our ICA sessions, I heard a statement from another association executive that if your in-person events are theater productions, your online events are TV productions. Well, I do agree somewhat, and I'm sure the event designer has a huge role of your TV producer there, pulling all the different elements together. But I also want to add to it that I actually feel that the online events are still also theater productions. You do need the magic happening. You do need even more engagement with your audience because they are not in the room. So you do need that event designer who is pulling them in. And there's a great book which has been around for a long time. It's called Computers as Theater by Brenda Laurel. And there you will see what the online world and our online events have together in common with Shakespeare.
Ooh. Very interesting. So that was entitled Computer as Theater. Excellent. 30 points. And what you said there, so again, what can we only experience by being at the event in this moment, whether it's live, whether it's virtual, whether it's face-to-face, it's still that same critical question. Beautiful. So our last question in this category, what if someone were to say to you, I've never planned a virtual event before. What sort of resources are there where I can better learn to become a fabulous virtual event planner? Ksenia.
So I already mentioned that you have tons of webinars, certification program, in-house training. Don't underestimate the value and knowledge every of your colleagues holds. And there's also something out there which has become a trend, and it's a mentorship program. So try and learn from mentors who are willing to share their knowledge, but also if you do hold knowledge, try and share it with others. People really appreciate it in these times.
Excellent. Mentorship, 100% agree with that, 100 points. Diane, you have a follow-up.
I think I'd just like to mention some certification programs that are out there, and we'll certainly drop them in the chat as well for our audience. PCMA, the Professional Convention Managers Association, has a digital event strategist certification. That certification has just been revamped too, so you'll get the latest and the greatest information there. MPI has a certification in virtual event meeting management. Meetings Without Walls has a virtual event planner certification, and all these can be done online, which is really, really great. And some of them are condensed programs, so you can get them done in a short amount of time. Virtual Events Institute has a certification, and there are other skill sets that you'll learn, such as online marketing, social media courses out there that will come in handy too, because once you start into the world of virtual, it expands well beyond just the execution of the event, but how to use all the other tools that are tying in to the channel that you'll actually be distributing and broadcasting the content. So a few certification programs to consider or put in your 2021 budget, because virtual is not going away.
No, and as you said, it keeps changing and evolving. It's fantastic that these programs are also keeping up with that. 35 points. Ian, I think you might have something to say.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to go down the certification route, there are quite a few of us that run virtual events. So you could ask us. I'm always happy to give back. So ask me, I'll tell you what I know. And hopefully it'll be of use to you.
Kind of like a Jedi Master, Ian.
Oh, no, not Jedi. I'm a Sith.
Pardon. 25 points. That closes out this category. And now we have a note from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by Mask and Hand Sanitizer, your germ-avoiding winning combo. Pack them, use them, wear them, so we can all meet face-to-face again, please. Thank you. Now moving on to our very last category. This is What Would You Do If? It is a lightning round. Contestants, get your buzzer hands ready. This is going to be a quick one. Alrighty. What would you do if the speaker doesn't show up because of time zone difference? Tina.
To actually avoid that, send calendar invites with the meeting link to the speakers so they have it in their agenda in the correct time zone. Another backup plan would be to pre-record the session or collect mobile numbers so you can reach out to the speaker in the rehearsal if he or she is not there. Also, have a backup speaker ready in case the actual speaker doesn't show up.
20 points. Thank you, Stina. But I think our Sith Lord has something to say. Ian.
Yeah, see, we always do stuff live, so we would never pre-record anyone. Again, it depends on the type of event that you're running. But, what we would have is we would make sure that, our facilitators were able to improvise. So either they continue a discussion, they change it into a kind of discussion with some of the audience, or, we change the program around a little bit. Totally agree with mobile numbers. Call them. We had one speaker at our last event who, he didn't come on camera because he just got out of bed. So he kind of missed the start, but only by about 7 minutes. So, we had a bit of improv going.
We can agree to disagree on certain points here. 20 points for that, for thinking on your feet, being quick for the facilitator, and for the virtual event planner. What would you do if the internet connection breaks down? Cassandra.
What we always say is have your mobile phone ready and attach yourself to the hotspot. Works every time like a charm.
Excellent. Final question in this category. What would you do if you have a technical issue from the production company that delays your start time. Diane.
Communicate, communicate, communicate. You cannot over communicate something like that. What we did was we actually had staff members assigned to all of our communication mechanisms for our conference in the event it happened. We were very fortunate that the only technical issue we had with our conference was the CPUs were a little slow, but we took care of that in a session. But communicate, communicate. So we had someone on Slack communicating, we had someone on Twitter, email just to the registrants, email to the broader community, Facebook, LinkedIn, just over communicate that situation. And if you don't know the time, don't say you know the time. Just say we're experiencing technical difficulties. We'll be back as soon as you can. Please stand by.
18 points for that. So that closes out that category. But because I'm the host, I feel like throwing another question out to you all. So let's talk data. How do you benchmark success for virtual events? Diane.
We did a survey, something just quick and simple. We surveyed our audience and we asked them to be very honest, rating us on a scale from 1 to 5 on how they felt the event went. And we surveyed everything from the layout of the event, the number of sessions, the technology that we use, the Slack channels that we use. And we got a lot of really good information back and things that we could expand upon and be better at executing moving forward, which was invaluable to us.
Follow-up question for 6 more points, Diane, on that. Did anything surprise you that you weren't expecting to receive as part of the data?
I was a little bit surprised on how much negative feedback we got not having a dedicated poster presentation time. We left that element of our conference a little loose just to address all of the many time zones that we were trying to serve for the conference. So we did learn that dedicated face-to-face time for the poster presenters was extremely important. We knew going into it that people would struggle with the virtual networking. And I was pleasantly surprised on the positive side of how much they did like the virtual networking and gave us some pretty good ratings.
Ian.
So before we did our virtual event, we picked up on about 35 35 members of our community that we know and trust, people that have been around our community for a while. We told them what we had in mind, and bearing in mind that this was new for them as well, we asked them we asked them for their feedback. Beforehand, we wanted to know what they thought about our plans. And then afterwards, we wanted them to come back to us, having spoken to other people in their different sessions, and to come back to us with what they thought was good and what was bad. And we felt that was the best way to sort of get a good feeling as to what people really thought about our event.
Excellent. 30 points for both of you. And because I'm host and Diane said a really good point that I want to ask one more question on, virtual event networking. Do you have any stories, platforms, tips, and successes or failures that you could share with our audience today that you've incorporated? Ksenia.
So when we were talking about the value of a meeting, we were all talking about the content and how important it is for people to actually register. But one critical element which we really noticed is the networking elements as well. And that is the elements for which people came back for. And for instance, we've had our Meetings Hub on air, which was really working very well. We tested a couple of networking sites, Yo Tribe, which is now Wonder. And another element which we tested is the fun element, which we ended our first online event with, where we actually had a karaoke and everybody was singing to the song I Will Survive. So I'm hoping that this will be in the memories of a lot of people later on as well.
Ksenia, I love that. And a fun fact is my very first karaoke song I sang when I was 12 was I Will Survive. So you get 100 points for that response. Ian, can you top that though?
I don't know whether I could top I Will Survive. And I'm certainly not going to sing it. We're doing a murder mystery in December. And we actually did a test the other week, and took us a couple of hours. But what we're going to do is it's going to be open to everyone, and we're going to split people up into teams, and we're going to have this murder mystery, and the team that wins will get some kind of prize. And we just thought that would be a great sort of icebreaker. And we may do it at different times as well, because obviously with this being a 24-hour event, not everybody is going to be on Central European time. So we need to figure out how to do that. But certainly the idea is that we'll run this murder mystery. And then we'll also have some, we're not having a gala dinner or anything, but we're going to have some roundtable sessions. And we did one actually in June, which was basically a bit of nostalgia. A few of us sort of telling stories about, when they've been to previous ISPIM conferences and what they remember and how they got into it and, how we all met type of things. And that was a lot of fun. I wasn't sure how it would go, but, we ended up doing this for like about 4.5 hours or something. And it was really good fun.
Both of those sound fantastic. 30 points for that. So today we've touched on 5 different categories. So for my final question for each of you, what is your best virtual events learning experience that you could share as a key takeaway for our fantastic audience today? We'll start with you, Diane.
Don't overestimate or underestimate the tech knowledge of your community. It's much better to over-communicate how to use a platform, how to navigate the platform with how to do sheets or short videos than to under-communicate, because the last thing you want is a frustrated audience.
Absolutely. 25 points. Sina.
We've done plenty of online events by now, and we noticed the best time to host your event is 2 p.m. Central European Time. That way you can serve an international audience. From an organizer point of view, and to keep in mind that you have to do rehearsals, don't organize an event on a Monday.
Those are very specific. Thank you for that, Sina. 32 points. Ian, I see your lightsaber.
You have to test. Test, and test. It's really important that you do that. We did a test exactly 1 week before our last virtual event, and we did it to the actual time slots of that were in the program. And what we found was that we learned so much from that, and then so did all the different presenters. And interestingly enough, when we ran because we do run a scientific conference, and when presenters got together, they actually found out a little bit more about what their fellow presenters were going to be talking about. And it meant that during the actual conference itself, those sessions where people had actually communicated beforehand, I say in person, but over Zoom, actually were much better than the ones where they had only just communicated via email. And the only sessions that we had any issues with at all during our actual conference were the ones where people decided that they didn't really need to do testing. So we're not going to give people the option for December now. They're going to have to test, or they're not going to be allowed into the conference. So keep it simple, make sure you test like crazy, and have fun while you do it.
Prepare. 20 points. And Ksenia, your closing point.
I would like to add what Ian already said, and say, ensure that there is a fun element, but also don't forget the human element. Everybody within your audience is a human being. They want to connect. So enable them to connect to you, to your speaker, to your content, but also to each other.
I absolutely agree. Humans interacting with humans, never forget that. 40 points. And because you are all so competitive, You are probably wondering who is the winner of today. But because the points are so arbitrary, as I said, Sina's a winner, Ksenia's a winner, Diane's a winner, Ian's a winner, everyone's a winner. Let's tell you what you won. So, Ksenia and Diane, because you both really love wine, we're going to be shipping you 3 barrels of wine from France. Good luck storing that. Ian, because you put all of your cats to work, you're going to get 5 bags of cat food per each cat, and you can get 26 packs of beer. And Sina, last but not least, you're entering the rainy season in the Netherlands, so we're going to send you a brightly colored umbrella for each day of the week. And that is all the time we have today on the I Create Community Awesomeness Show. Thank you to my fantastic contestants, this amazing audience, and joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you all face to face soon.